My name is Tom Anderson. I'm 46 this year, and I have a wife, Emily, and a 3-year-old son, Jack. A 46-year-old with a 3-year-old son. To most people, he might be considered a late-born child. Jack looks like Emily with his big, bright eyes and round, chubby cheeks. He's incredibly cute. He is truly our treasure. Thank you for being born. Our hearts are filled with gratitude. He laughed. He stood up. He said, "Daddy." He completed his first errand. Every day is filled with surprises and growth. Experiencing emotions and joys I never knew when I was alone. Feelings I've never felt before. My life is now rich with color, and each day passes busily and vividly. He is just so adorable. I find myself watching over everything he does with a goofy smile. Why are you grinning like that? You look creepy. Someone might mistake you for a weirdo. Emily often teases me, but I can't help it. Our son is as adorable as an angel. When he's with Emily, his angelic charm multiplies. Together, they make my head spin. They're a guilty pleasure. I used to think I wouldn't hurt even if he were in my eye was an exaggeration, but now I want to tell my past self how wrong I was. Our son is truly so cute, it wouldn't hurt even if he were in my eye. In fact, I want to keep him in my sight forever. Am I crazy? No, I'm not the only one. Jack's charm captivates my father and grandfather as well. They live on the same property, though in different houses, so they can come and go freely. If I can't find Jack, he's usually playing on my father's lap or out for a walk with my grandfather. Everyone competes to take care of Jack. It's inevitable, our child is just that angelic. Oops, I should stop bragging about my son. We wouldn't want him to get kidnapped. I run a small company. It's a local, community-based construction business. My grandfather was a master carpenter, managing a team of highly skilled craftsmen. Every day, many workers labored in the workshop next to our house. They were busy carrying, cutting, and assembling wood, working up a sweat. As a child, I thought they looked incredibly cool. I loved the sound of the plane shaving wood and the smell of sawdust. The way the wood shavings sparkled in the sunlight was mesmerizing. It was beautiful. I could watch for hours, utterly fascinated. This place is full of dangerous things, so you can't move around on your own. My grandfather was strict and quite scary. He was the epitome of a master carpenter. Even though he was pleased with my interest, he wouldn't let me into the workshop because it was too dangerous. But what child would give up that easily? I would sneak peeks into the workshop whenever I had the chance, making sure my grandfather didn't catch me. The foreman, John, would always invite me over when he saw me. "Hey, sport, back to watch again? Come on over here," he'd say, beckoning me to his side to watch him work. "Sport, do you like the plane?" "Yes." When you use the plane, the wood becomes so smooth and shiny. It's like magic. Is that so? Magic, huh? Well then, let me show you a bit of magic. John usually didn't talk much. He quietly worked on his wood. A bit of an oddball, but a master with the plane, respected by his peers. He could shave wood thinly or thickly, making it look like delicate chocolate curls. It seemed as though the wood enjoyed being shaved by John. Amazing. "John, the wood looks happy. It's saying thank you for making it beautiful." Can you understand what the wood is saying? No, I can't understand it, but it looks like it's smiling. The wood is smiling, huh? To me, it seemed like John could hear the wood's words. He always looked so happy while working with the plane, as if he were talking to a lover. Some people found this creepy, so John often worked alone. But his skills were unquestionable, so no one complained. I believe my grandfather relied heavily on John. With technological advances, carpentry work was increasingly replaced by machines. Fewer wooden houses were being built, fewer young people aspired to be craftsmen. The work gradually dwindled, and my grandfather's face grew more and more forlorn. He used to proudly show off the main pillars he found. "Look, Tom. Isn't this a magnificent main pillar?" It was a perfectly straight piece of Zelkova wood, so thick that I couldn't wrap my arms around it. The main pillar is the heart of the house. It is the house itself and its guardian spirit. My grandfather was particular about the main pillar. To clients hesitant due to budget concerns, he would often say, "What are you talking about? The house is defined by its main pillar. Don't skimp on the important parts." We often visited houses that used those meticulously selected main pillars. This is my pride. Look, isn't it a magnificent main pillar? I remember him showing off the pillars proudly, even though the houses weren't his. Despite his dedication and pride in his craft, there was nothing my grandfather could do without houses to build. Carpentry had become a declining industry. My father refused to take over the company. Being an only child, if he didn't take over, the business couldn't survive. My grandfather considered closing the company. He was actually in the process of shutting it down, introducing his craftsmen to trusted fellow carpenters. I'm pretty sure John also moved to some construction company during that period. My grandfather's company was slowly being dismantled, but I opposed it. "Grandpa, when I grow up, I'll become a carpenter. I'll take over your company, so don't quit." In hindsight, what a cruel thing that was to say. At the time, my grandfather was already over 70. In those days, people in their 70s were mostly retired and hardly working anymore. Craftsmen were passing their skills to the next generation and stepping back from the front lines. Telling my grandfather not to quit in such an environment was practically a curse. But my grandfather smiled warmly and said, "Really? You'll take over, Tom? Then I have to keep going." True to his word, my grandfather remained active until I became an adult. By the time I took over the company, the era was already dominated by housing manufacturers. Our company survived as a local construction firm, taking orders from these manufacturers. Thanks to my grandfather, I also became knowledgeable about main pillars, but in today's world, houses requiring such pillars are rare. Still, whenever we could, my grandfather and I would go to the mountains together to find potential main pillars. As my grandfather approaches 90, his legs are still strong, and his love for main pillars persists. "One day, I want to build a magnificent house with you, Tom. That's my dream too. I hope the day comes when we can make it come true." I met my wife, Emily, during one of these mountain walks. While we were looking at trees, Emily was looking at flowers. Emily is a chef specializing in organic cuisine and runs a small local cafe. That day, she was looking for herbs and other plants to use in her cooking but got lost while looking down at the ground. "Oh. Finally, someone. I'm so glad." She sighed in relief as soon as she saw me, and my heart was struck in an instant. "Miss, did you come all the way here alone?" "Yes, I was looking for herbs, but I got lost while looking down." Her charming smile made her look like an angel or a mountain goddess. While I was dazed by her divine presence, my grandfather and Emily hit it off immediately. "Wow! What a magnificent tree. It has such a commanding presence. You've got a good eye, miss. This will make a fine main pillar. My gut tells me so. Are you a carpenter, sir?" "Yes, I am. My grandson Tom has taken over now, but I still hammer away, building houses." "That's so cool. A real craftsman. Don't flatter me too much, you'll make me blush," my grandfather said, beaming with pride. I thought to myself, if things go well, my grandfather's old age will be secure. Maybe I can give him a great-grandchild to hold. Even though I hadn't even introduced myself yet, I was already envisioning a future with Emily. Even after getting married and having our son, Emily continued working. With my grandfather, father, and mother at home. Even when Emily goes to work, she feels at ease knowing there's someone to take care of her son, Jack. And above all, Emily shines when she is cooking. Though we work with different materials, we understand each other as craftsmen striving to perfect our skills. Emily started joining us on our mountain walks on weekends. My grandfather would look up, and Emily would look down. I'd guide the two of them to prevent them from getting lost. Maybe one day, Jack will join us too. Imagining such a future fills me with excitement. The bond we formed in the mountains quickly led to our marriage and the blessing of a child. Kids grow up so fast. Before I knew it, Jack was old enough to go to kindergarten. Since preparation is crucial in cooking, Emily always leaves for work early in the morning. I have more flexibility with my schedule, so it's my job to take Jack to kindergarten. It's about a 20-minute walk from our house. It's not far enough to drive, so we take a leisurely walk there. However, kids at this age don't walk straight. Look, a butterfly. He runs off to chase it. Dad, look at the flowers. Should we pick some for Mom? No, Jack, those flowers belong to that house. They're taking good care of them. Then how about those flowers over there? It's sweet how he thinks of his mom, but if we keep stopping, we'll be late. We can look at the flowers with Mom next time. That way, we can find the ones she likes best. With that, I coax him along towards kindergarten. The morning drop-off is fine, but the pickup is tricky. Kindergarten ends in the middle of my workday. I can't just leave work. So, the pickup is usually handled by my mom or my grandfather. Most of the time, my mom picks him up and does the grocery shopping afterward. But when she's busy, my grandfather steps in. What happens when you leave my grandfather and Jack alone? Chaos ensues. Jack is incredibly curious, just like my grandfather and more so than my father or me. He stops to inspect every tree and plant, turning a 20-minute walk into a 40-minute adventure. Once, during the height of the growing season, they were gone for over 2 hours. We were in a panic, thinking they might have been in an accident. Or that my grandfather might have started wandering off due to dementia, or that Jack might have been kidnapped. They returned, covered in burrs. After that, we equipped them with small devices with GPS and talk functions. Despite his spirit, my grandfather couldn't escape old age. He once threw his back out trying to lift a piece of lumber. He wasn't bedridden, but picking up a kindergartner was out of the question. Until his back healed, I took over picking up Jack. This meant leaving work early. Changing clothes was a hassle. The kindergarten wasn't far. So, I went in my work clothes. When I arrived, I encountered the group of moms picking up their kids. I recognized some faces and greeted them when one woman marched over. Her name was Jennifer Smith, the boss of the mom group. Her husband was a manager at a well-known national home building company, and she often used this fact to assert her dominance. She always wore expensive clothes and flaunted her branded bags. Though she lived only about 10 minutes away, she always arrived in a luxury car. To someone like me, it seemed like a waste of gas money for such a short distance. But to Jennifer, the extra gas expense was a status symbol. Just from these observations, our values were incompatible. I knew we wouldn't get along. I've never seen it myself, but according to the neighbors, Grandpa and Jennifer are arch-enemies and clash like a mongoose and a cobra whenever they meet. They would glare at each other every time they met. Oh my, still doing things the old-fashioned way? How dreary, it's making the kindergarten feel so gloomy. What are you talking about, you? Still flaunting those gaudy outfits? Can you even chase after your kid in that? My child, unlike yours, doesn't run off unpredictably. Please don't compare him to your uncontrollable rascal. A little mischief is good for a kid. Hey, champ. Want to join us? Stop it. If my kid hangs out with the likes of you, he'll turn out just as weird. People around us were nervously watching, wishing these ugly arguments would stop for the sake of the kids. My mother struggled due to her relationship with my grandfather. Whenever she picked up Jack, Jennifer would make snide remarks like, "Oh, did the old man finally kick the bucket? It's so peaceful today." It made things difficult for my mom, but she put on a brave face to avoid upsetting her grandson. "Sorry for causing you so much trouble, Mom." Now, Jennifer was charging towards me. "Hey, you in the filthy clothes." Was she talking to me? Yes, you. Why are you wearing work clothes to pick up your kid? I'm still on the job. Which kid's father are you? I'm Tom Anderson. Jack plays with your son Ryan a lot. Thanks for looking after him. Oh, from the stubborn old man's family? Calling my grandfather a stubborn old man to my face? She must be brave to say that to someone she just met. My grandfather seems to be fond of you too. Thanks for that. We're not doing him any favors. It's just a polite greeting. Obviously, it's a social nicety. Anyway, your clothes are filthy. I don't want people to think my kid goes to the same kindergarten as yours. Could you leave? This is my company's uniform. I take pride in my work, So your comment is quite disrespectful. What's wrong with calling filth what it is? And what's with a uniform that's work clothes? That's so low class. I can't let that slide. What do you mean by low class? Low class is low class. My husband graduated from a top university and is now a manager at Summit Housing. You've heard of it, right? A top-tier, publicly traded company with branches nationwide. That's what makes him an elite. While people like you who work in small workshops in dirty clothes are the bottom of society. Remember that. It's impressive that your husband is a manager at a major company. But his company wouldn't function without the support of subcontractors and craftsmen. Shouldn't there be respect for those at the bottom too? Ha! What a joke. Respect? For you? Be grateful we give work to people like you. You'd go out of business without jobs from us. She really loves the word bottom. It's true my company gets jobs from your husband's company. But the one to thank is your husband, not you. If he acts superior, that's one thing. But why should you? What's there to respect about you? The other moms and teachers watched us anxiously. Some even seemed excited about how this confrontation would unfold. Go! Put her in her place. I could almost hear them cheering me on. Jennifer likely always acted superior like this. People with undeserved power are scary. They don't listen to reason or logic, and their arrogance knows no bounds. You are wrong. Anyone who tried to correct them would face severe retaliation. Everyone was too scared to step in. What's with your attitude? You're infuriating. This is bad for the kids. Leave now. The bad influence here is your attitude, lady. I cursed her in my mind. People like her only drain your energy. It's best to just walk away. Enough is enough. Fine, if you insist. I guess I won't be building that $10 million house with your husband's company. $10 million? Are you kidding me? Someone like you can't build a $10 million house. Save your dreams for bedtime. All right. It won't be long before your confidence wanes. You'll regret this. I took my son's hand and quickly left the kindergarten. The next day, I had an unexpected visitor at work. Mr. Anderson, Stephen Smith from Summit Homes is here to see you. Stephen? We didn't have a meeting scheduled today. I feigned ignorance, but I had a good idea why he was here. Stephen Smith from Summit Homes, a name many of you might recognize. Yes, the husband of Jennifer, who confronted me at the kindergarten, was none other than a client of mine. And I had a $10 million new build contract with Summit Homes. My grandfather was a master temple carpenter, specializing in the restoration and construction of national treasures and cultural properties. He was considered a living legend in the industry, known as a cultural property preservation expert. Even though he had retired from the front lines, he used to earn close to $1 million a year. Following in his footsteps, I also became a certified temple carpenter. Though not yet at my grandfather's level, I am recognized as a top-tier temple carpenter and earn a substantial income. I rebranded our inherited company as a construction firm. In today's world, it's tough to survive solely on carpentry work. As a construction firm, we could oversee comprehensive projects involving various trades, including design and project management. Having a sales department is a huge advantage. Being a carpenter, project manager, and salesperson allows me to directly interact with clients and accurately meet their detailed needs. Our meticulous approach to client consultations, precise and satisfying finishes, and thorough aftercare. This thorough preparation builds client trust and leads to the next job. We're now heavily invested in renovations, and after being featured on TV, we have bookings several years in advance. Our sales have doubled, tripled, even quintupled, allowing us to raise employees' salaries and providing financial benefits to our families. As the CEO of a construction firm, building an ordinary house isn't an option. In a small town, we decided to use our home as a marketing tool. The conclusion we reached was a $10 million new build. If this construction order falls through, Summit Homes won't be able to take it lightly. I didn't tattle to Stephen. Jennifer, with her chatty and prideful nature. She must have mentioned the incident at the kindergarten herself. Stephen must have rushed over after hearing about it. Tom, it seems my wife caused quite a bit of trouble yesterday. Oh, that? I feigned ignorance. Did Jennifer say something? Well, she made some unnecessary comments about your attire. To us craftsmen, our work clothes are a sacred uniform, a source of pride. It's not pleasant to have them belittled. Of course, I understand. I could see Stephen sweating. He didn't look well. But that's not the main issue. I was at fault for not changing out of my work clothes. Not at all. But calling us low class is a bit much, don't you think? Is our work really considered low class? Absolutely not. There's no such thing. He was turning pale. Are you okay, Stephen? Given the uncertainty about entrusting work to such low-class individuals, we might have to reconsider our future dealings. Please, wait. That would be a problem. Of course it would. Losing the expertise of my grandfather and me, top temple carpenters, would be a significant blow to Summit Homes. They couldn't afford to lose us. And about the $10 million new build we've requested, I think we'll have to cancel that as well. Please, wait. That would be a huge problem. Even if it's a problem for you, I'd been insulted too much to just let it slide. I've spoken to Jennifer. I've explained how reputable Anderson Construction is and how skilled your craftsmen are. We owe a great deal to you. Please, can you find it in your heart to forgive us this time? Stephen was sweating profusely, visibly anxious. I don't like mixing work with personal matters. But your wife's behavior was beyond the pale. She insulted not just me but also my grandfather. And in front of the kids. Do you know that your son, Ryan, has been treating my son, Jack, coldly? He said, I won't play with you because you're boring, using words he probably doesn't even understand. What do you think about that? I'm truly sorry about that. With that, Stephen started to cry. It seemed he had been fed up with Jennifer's behavior for a long time, and seeing his son start to mimic her was breaking his heart. He had tried to talk to Jennifer, but she insisted she wasn't at fault, and nothing changed. Her constant need to assert dominance had made them unpopular with the neighbors. But her pride was as towering as Mount Everest and only continued to grow. Jennifer takes pride in my position at a major housing company and boasts about it everywhere. But as a manager, I don't have as much power or success as she claims. My status is largely due to the excellent work Anderson Construction does. I can't continue with Jennifer if she keeps acting this way. I'm going to divorce her. Announcing this to me wasn't something I was prepared to handle. I'm calling Jennifer here to apologize. With that, Stephen called Jennifer. While waiting for her, Stephen continued to vent about his wife. It felt like a therapy session. Soon, Jennifer arrived. What is this about? Why did you call me here? It's so dirty. My clothes will get ruined. Quiet. Apologize to Mr. Anderson for your rude behavior yesterday and all the other times. What? Why should I apologize? They're just our subcontractors. We're above them, so there's no need to apologize. I'm a manager because of Tom's support. If Anderson Construction pulls out, I could be demoted or even fired. Apologize now. If you don't, I'll divorce you immediately. Whether she understood her mistakes or was simply cowed by her husband's intensity, Jennifer turned pale and began to apologize to me. I'm sorry. I was wrong. Please forgive me. Has she ever worked a day in her life? She doesn't seem to know how to apologize properly. Getting upset at her would just drain my energy. Let's leave the past behind. Just stop using foul language in front of the children. Can you do that? Yes, I'll try. Not try. You must understand and do it. I understand. I doubt she's genuinely changed, but continuing this would be unfair to Stephen. I'll let it go. So, Mr. Anderson, about the $10 million new build. I'll observe Jennifer's behavior from now on. I'll decide after that. Understood. Pulling the stunned Jennifer along, they left. You're too soft. You should have given her a harder time. You were listening? I saw Jennifer rushing over and wondered what was going on. So, I eavesdropped. I didn't want to push too hard and provoke her. We'll still have to deal with her after kindergarten. In a small community. From elementary school, and possibly all the way through high school, our sons will likely spend time in the same environment. There's no need to pass on our conflicts to the next generation. The next day, Jennifer became very quiet. After dropping off her child, she would leave without talking to anyone. Not interacting meant she couldn't assert her dominance. The other moms seemed more cheerful. Jennifer had been constantly complaining to the kindergarten. But that stopped, making it easier for the teachers, who now worked with smiles, creating a peaceful atmosphere. Such an atmosphere naturally affects the children. They stopped quarreling, and the overall mood at the kindergarten brightened. Jennifer, the only one still sulking, stopped showing up after about a month. She was so stressed from acting humble outside that she vented her anger at home on Stephen. "Why do I have to go through this?" she raged daily, leaving Stephen utterly exhausted and dismayed, leading eventually to their divorce. Stephen got custody of Ryan, and Jennifer was kicked out of their home. Her brother and sister-in-law, who had taken over the family home, refused to take her back. So Jennifer rented a cheap apartment in the next town and began living alone. Needing to earn a living, she started working at a nearby supermarket, facing quite a few challenges. As a newcomer, she was bossed around by veterans. Having always been the one asserting dominance, she now found herself on the receiving end. It must have been quite a humbling experience. She's probably learning firsthand how hard work is and the importance of relationships. Or perhaps she's cursing me as the cause of her misfortune. Life is long. If she can reform and take a new step forward, that would be ideal. Stephen's mother moved in to help care for Ryan. On his days off, Stephen handled the drop-off and pick-up. Stephen's suave demeanor was well received by the moms and he was easily accepted. As I started seeing him more at the kindergarten and began talking privately, the distance between us lessened. We discovered we share the same hobbies, and now we bond as dad friends, sharing parenting concerns. This kind of relationship is quite nice. The $10 million new build is currently under construction. With Jennifer gone, the project, which doubles as a showcase for our company, is progressing well. Building it holds great significance. The hybrid structure of wood and steel is sturdy and long-lasting, with a wooden exterior that will surely captivate many. Anderson Construction is handling the wooden parts, especially the main areas of the house. Building our own house with our own hands. I want my son to see that. At the center stands a massive main pillar that my grandfather and I painstakingly selected. It is the culmination of my grandfather's life work, majestic and beautiful enough to gaze at for hours. "I want to build a magnificent house with you someday, Tom," my grandfather used to say, almost like a mantra. Now, that dream is coming true. Every task brings back memories. John quietly working on his wood in the corner of the workshop. The sawdust dancing in the light, its smell. The sweat of the busy craftsman, houses coming together like magic. The days spent in the mountains, learning the craft of carpentry. Among those encounters was Emily, and together we built a family. Now, watching Jack grow has become the center of our lives. All these experiences are being infused into the new house. This house will surely be warmer than any other. Not only for those living in it but also for those visiting. As we build, Jack watches from a distance. "When I grow up, I want to build a house with great-grandpa too," he declares, his eyes shining. My grandfather smiles warmly, looking at his great-grandson. "Yes, let's build a house together, shall we?" Whether that dream will come true, I don't know. But I hope such a future comes. I can't help but wish for it. Meow, meow. My head hurts. Good morning, Fluffy. My head is pounding. I wake up to the sound of my cat Fluffy's meowing. A fluffy ball is rubbing against my face. This is our usual morning routine. I'm so hungover today. My body feels heavy. I check the time and day on my phone by my pillow while petting Fluffy. Sunday. Oh, right, I had a drinking party last night. Still groggy and with a splitting headache, my brain isn't functioning well. Yesterday, we had a celebration because a big project was completed, and our manager, John, organized a drinking party. I feel like I was made to drink a lot. I vaguely recall last night while slowly getting up and scratching my body. Oh, I'm in a t-shirt and shorts. Even drunk, I managed to change. While spacing out with incomplete memories, Fluffy starts meowing more insistently for breakfast. Sorry. Let's get you some food. As I blankly watch Fluffy eating, the only clear thought in my mind is that I drank too much. I smell bad. So I changed, but didn't shower? When was the last time I drank this much? I remember having a few beers and some shots of vodka after the initial toast. I can't remember anything. Well, I should take a shower. Just as I'm heading to the bathroom, my phone rings. It's a call from my colleague, Tim. Are you okay after last night? Tim called to check on me. Actually, I don't remember much after a certain point. I tell him honestly that I have no memory of the later part of the night. I figured. I thought that might be the case. Tim chuckles and starts telling me what happened. John was buying drinks, saying it was all on him, and insisting that no glass should be empty. In the midst of this, a senior colleague, a former athlete, got drunk first and started a game where the loser had to drink vodka. Several people lost, and I was one of them. Even though it was a small glass, the vodka had a high alcohol content. I apparently knocked a shot down, pretending to be fine. When Tim, who was sitting next to me, asked if I was okay, I repeatedly and cheerfully said, I'm fine. When you say that, it usually means you're not fine at all. I swapped your mixed drinks for water, but somehow, you always got caught during those times and kept drinking anyway. Tim, sounding astounded, was still concerned about me despite my attempts to seem okay. So you don't remember going home with Emily? No way. I went home with Emily? I can't help but exclaim in surprise. My memory is completely blank from the time I took that vodka shot until I woke up this morning. How drunk was I? According to Tim, I volunteered to walk Emily home, saying, "You're pretty, and it's not safe for you to walk alone. Besides, we both take the same route to go home. Even though I have no memory, what was I thinking? You should contact Emily and make sure you didn't cause any trouble." I am grateful for Tim's concern. I can't believe I went home with my supervisor, Emily. Worried about what I might have done, I decide to contact her. I try to draft a text but keep deleting and rewriting, unsure of what to say. Thank you for last night. Did you get home safely? I ended up sending a general message, but considering I have no memory, asking if she got home safely felt hypocritical. Worried that I might have done something wrong, I nervously waited for Emily's reply. Thanks for checking. I took a taxi home safely. Reading her response, I felt relieved. Since she mentioned taking a taxi, she must have gotten home alone. Just as I was thinking that, another message from Emily came through. Thanks for last night. I got so obsessed, and it got late. Thanks for inviting me into your apartment. You were really sweet. What? She was in my apartment? It got late. Obsessed. Sweet? I read Emily's email over and over again, unable to comprehend it. The more I pieced the words together, the more my mind drifted to inappropriate thoughts. No, that's impossible. Shaking my head to clear my thoughts, I couldn't deny the possibility entirely. Did I really? Oh no. I started to panic, unable to dismiss the idea. Emily is 10 years older than me. She's a top-notch career woman. Fair-skinned with big eyes and a sharp nose, I've often admired her profile. She's somewhat my type. But at work, she's also strict. I frequently get scolded for my mistakes. She's beautiful, but when she gets angry, she's truly scary. Her intense gaze makes me shiver every time she scolds me. But I know her anger is because I'm still inexperienced. I need to get my act together. I can't afford to be thinking about love or anything like that. Despite these thoughts, what on earth did I do last night? Time just passed by as I was wondering to reply. Thanks. Sorry for keeping you up late. Let's do our best at work tomorrow. After much deliberation, I sent a neutral message. Oh man, what a mess. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't piece together my memory. Fluffy, do you know anything? I asked Fluffy, who had finished breakfast and was sitting next to me, while petting his head. Fluffy just meowed. Normally, I can somewhat understand what Fluffy is saying, but today, I had no clue. Monday. I was nervous about facing Emily, but she acted as usual. I found myself constantly watching Emily. Every time our eyes met, I got startled and quickly looked away. Taking deep breaths while staring at my computer screen, I tried to calm myself, but my hands couldn't function properly. Is the meeting material ready? Startled by her sudden voice from behind, I almost jumped out of my chair. Not yet. What are you spacing out for? Focus, focus. Get it together. Emily's stern look made me sit up straight. Emily is still as intimidating as ever. Maybe she's keeping work and personal life separate, regardless of what might have happened that night. Or maybe it was all a misunderstanding and nothing happened with Emily. Her behavior at work made me relieved, and I realized I had let my imagination run wild. I was too embarrassed to admit my blackout and too afraid to ask Emily, and I couldn't figure out what happened. But as nothing unusual occurred, days passed by, and soon 2 weeks had gone by. During work, I decided to take a coffee break and headed to the break room. Emily was also there making coffee. How are you? Good. The usual greetings. By this time, I had already decided that nothing significant happened that night and was back to my regular routine. I took a sip of my coffee and gazed out the window, lost in thought. Next to me, Emily also took a sip. However, I noticed Emily's reflection in the window, and she was staring at me. I involuntarily stiffened. Worried I had messed up at work again, I cautiously turned to face her. Hey, so? Yes. I straightened up at Emily's words. Always ready to get scolded. When is good for you? When is good for what? Was it for a work meeting or a deadline I forgot? I desperately tried to recall any relevant task, but my mind went blank. However, I noticed a slight smile on Emily's face, transforming her stern expression into a friendly one. You said it's fine anytime. And you will let me know when you're free in the evening. How about tonight? I had no idea what she was talking about. Despite her hint, I couldn't connect it to anything in my memory. Yes, sure. Buying time, those were the words that came out. Then, I suddenly remembered that text. Did something actually happen between me and Emily? As soon as the thought crossed my mind, I felt a surge of electricity from head to toe, my pores all opening at once. Looks like I can leave on time today, so is tonight okay? Emily's words threw my mind into a panic. Yeah, that's fine. Trying to stay calm, my heart felt like it would jump out of my chest. Great, let's grab some dinner and go home. Sure. See you later then. Emily walked away with the biggest smile I'd ever seen on her. What does this mean? Wait, are we at a point where she comes over to my place? What did I do? Work was the last thing on my mind. Ouch. I must have tried to calm myself with coffee. I took a big gulp despite it still being hot, burning my mouth and spilling it on the floor. I couldn't focus on work after that, but somehow, by shaking my head repeatedly, I managed to finish by the end of the day. All right, let's go. Emily seemed unusually cheerful. My throat went dry, unable to believe what was happening. You're coming to my place, right? Maybe we were heading to a bar. I asked Emily to confirm, wondering if I was mistaken again. Of course. We can't meet anywhere else but your place. Her usual stern expression was gone. I could see that Emily was excited. What is our relationship? For the past 2 weeks, nothing had happened with Emily, and suddenly, something seemed to start again. It's okay to drink at your place, right? Let's grab something from the supermarket. Emily's voice snapped me back to reality. It felt like I had teleported. I found myself on a train, already a station away, trying to grasp what was happening. I had tried countless times to remember that night at the drinking party. Should I tell Emily honestly that I have no memory of it? But now, admitting that would be too embarrassing. And if we were actually dating, it would be incredibly rude to say I don't remember. Sweat started to bead on my forehead from the stress. But she did say we could only meet at my place. Given that she acted normally at work, Could it mean we're secretly dating? I was so confused that I didn't even know if we were heading straight home. I can't wait to get to your home. I want a hug tonight. I heard Emily mumbling to herself, bringing me back to the present. A hug? Does that mean we really are dating? It's surprising that Emily likes me, but I need to make up my mind. Who cares if it started with a blackout? A relationship can start here. I had my answer. I should be brave about this. Do you want a hug? Right here? Checking that no one else was around, I opened my arms toward Emily. She stopped, looked at me for a moment, then burst out laughing. Was she just embarrassed? I guess it's awkward for adults to hug outside. You're right. Let's save the hug for when we get home. I was embarrassed too. Emily laughed as well. Are you jealous? Jealous? Of what? Fluffy may be a boy cat, but he's like a lover to you, right? Fluffy? He's so affectionate and cute. Even though we just met recently, he sat on my lap, and he was adorable. You said I could come over any time. But you never invited me again. I got tired of waiting. Oh, can we buy some treats for Fluffy? He'll be happy, right? Emily, who looked excited, entered the supermarket. Wait, was this all a misunderstanding? The realization hit me like a cold wave. I felt embarrassed and disappointed. I tried to remain composed but was clearly rattled. I ended up with a shopping basket full of grilled beef, rice balls, and sandwiches. Emily said, "Are you really going to eat all those carbs?" I made an excuse that they were for breakfast, feeling utterly confused. I arrived home feeling deflated. Fluffy greeted me with his tail straight up, rubbing against my legs and then Emily's. Emily was smitten with Fluffy. While I prepared Fluffy's food, Emily followed him around, cooing over how cute he was as he ate. Where was the usual stern Emily? You really like cats, huh? I told you before, I've had cats since I was a kid. Oh, did you? I almost let something slip. But this could be an opportunity. To find out more about last time, I asked her about the cats she had and how many there were. For a cat lover, talking about their pets is always enjoyable. The strategy worked, and Emily happily talked, saying, as I mentioned before. It turns out that Emily's family currently has 2 cats. Her family loves cats and has always had lots of cats since she was a child. When Emily started living alone, she considered finding a pet-friendly apartment but decided against it, thinking she couldn't properly care for a pet with her busy work schedule. She visits her family occasionally to see the cats, but it's rare due to the distance. During that time, she found out that I had a cat. That night at the drinking party, when my colleagues invited me to an after party, I said, I need to go home early because my cat is waiting for me. When I learned that we take the same route to go home, I told her, it's not safe to go alone, so I'll walk you home. On the way home, we talked about cats, and I told her cute stories and showed her pictures of Fluffy. Emily's eyes lit up. And I ended up inviting her over by saying, do you want to come to my place? Despite not remembering any of this, I laughed but felt relieved to finally understand the situation. Thanks for letting me see Fluffy again today. Emily was happy while playing with Fluffy. Fluffy, being friendly, loves being petted and would sit on anyone's lap. He would bring his toys to me or Emily, dropping them in front of us to play. If we threw a small stuffed toy, he would chase after it, and he loved playing with a feather toy. Fluffy is truly adorable. Emily was smiling and laughing while playing with him. You laugh a lot, Emily. The words slipped out. What do you mean by that? Are you saying I'm usually scary? Well, I guess I am. I know I can be intimidating. Yeah, I'm always nervous about getting scolded by you. Emily laughed out loud at my honesty. But seeing Emily like this, I found her incredibly cute. You're really cute when you laugh like this. Before I realized it, I had said it out loud. Emily looked away, blushing slightly. Cute, huh? What do you think, Fluffy? Emily petted Fluffy, talking to him. Fluffy meowed happily, rubbing against her and then coming to me, rubbing against me too. Our eyes met as we watched Fluffy. What? I just like seeing you like this. You're cute. Stop teasing me. I'm your boss, you know. Does being 10 years younger make it a problem? Oh no. Emily, wake up. We're going to be late. What? Oh no, I overslept. Emily jumped out of bed in a panic, and Fluffy watched from the bedside. Whose fault was this? I shouldn't blame Fluffy. Early morning, 4 a.m. Fluffy woke me up for food, and after feeding him, I went back to sleep, ended up oversleeping. Though we had set alarms, both Emily and I had turned them off without realizing it. That night, after I confessed my feelings to Emily, she asked for time to think. My initial excitement was due to a misunderstanding, but seeing Emily play with Fluffy made me realize I had liked her for a long time. Although she's still my boss, I thought we could always laugh together as long as I was with her. I honestly expressed my feelings, but Emily seemed concerned about our age difference and felt bad for not being able to commit. While waiting for Emily's response, my feelings never wavered. Despite feeling unsure, I invited Emily over again to see Fluffy, and this time, I confessed my feelings sincerely. I wanted to be with her no matter what. Please go out with me. But it seemed I wasn't the only one who wanted to be together. Meow. Fluffy, sitting beside me, meowed after my confession, looking at Emily. Fluffy, is it okay if I become Mike's girlfriend? Emily asked Fluffy, who meowed again and rubbed against her. Thank you. She said, whether to me or to Fluffy, I couldn't tell, but with Fluffy's encouragement, our relationship began smoothly. Our dates often involved staying in because Emily loved seeing Fluffy. Emily would often say, I don't want to be away from Fluffy and I wish I could take him home with me. Fluffy, would you like to be my cat? One day, Emily said this. Why don't you just become my wife? Let's get married. Fluffy would also love it, right? I had been planning to propose for a while now, so the words came out naturally. Fluffy looked at Emily and meowed. Fluffy was the first to approve our marriage. Now, Emily and I live together. We decided to register our marriage on a special anniversary. The date of the drinking party. When Emily and Fluffy first met. For me, it was an embarrassing day, but thanks to Fluffy, Emily is now by my side as my significant other. That's why we chose it as our fateful day. By the way, Emily doesn't know about my memory lapse. That's a secret between Fluffy and me, a pact between two guys. Somebody, please help me. I heard a young girl screaming. Looking for the source of the sound, I saw a high school girl being dragged away by a man. I forgot all about rushing to work and rescued the girl, but of course, I ended up being late. What the hell is this? Coming to work late and dressed like that? My boss scolded me. The next day, I was demoted and transferred. However, I stood my ground and said, no need for that. I'm quitting this job today. What? My name is Alex. Ever since birth, my skin was pale and my hair was pitch black and thick. The nurses used to say, he looks just like a doll. As I grew older, I had big eyes and long eyelashes, often being mistaken for a girl. Plus, having the name Alex led to me being called Alexa. I couldn't stand it. I despised being called girly or effeminate by everyone around me, even though it wasn't my choice. Being judged by appearances alone would likely continue as I grew up. So, I decided I needed to change from the inside and started working out. There was a character who mastered karate in a cartoon I liked at the time. And I admired him so much that I started learning karate as soon as I entered elementary school. I was drawn to the real fight aspect of karate. Naturally, I chose karate. At first, I happily went to the dojo, but the training was tougher than I expected, and I almost gave up many times. Bruises on my hands and feet were a daily occurrence, and I had no time to play. However, my father told me, a man sees things through to the end once he starts, and I wasn't allowed to quit until I got my black belt. By the time I hit puberty, I think I had become pretty strong. But my body was still slim, so I often got picked on by local bullies. Despite my delicate appearance, I was known as the weirdo who went to a karate dojo. Of course, beating untrained bullies using the techniques I learned was easy. Still, my father and Mr. Jenkins, my karate teacher, both told me never to use karate for fighting, so I never struck first. However, there was one time in high school when I used karate. It was after school when I was hanging out at the mall with my friends, Tom and Jake. We were having fun walking around the mall when we heard what sounded like a girl screaming. It wasn't a happy scream, it was clearly a cry for help. I looked around and saw a young girl, about elementary school age, being dragged away by a man. Tom and Jake were panicking, wondering whether to call the police or get a security guard. "I'll handle the guy." "You guys call the cops," I told Jake as I approached the man and the girl. Tom, who was good at studying, came along with me. "Hey, man. That girl clearly doesn't want to go with you. Let her go. Mind your own business." "No way. I can't ignore a kid who's that scared." While Tom was talking to the man, I made eye contact with the girl. I mouthed, "I'll save you soon," and she, on the verge of tears, mouthed back, "Help me." I nodded and gave Tom a signal. "So, are you really her father?" "Of course I am." "How rude." "Hey, little girl, is this guy really your father?" Ignoring the man's response, I asked the girl. She shook her head vigorously and yelled, "No. He's a stranger. Help me." The man clicked his tongue at me as I got into a fighting stance, saying, "What a hassle you guys are." He then grabbed a pen from a nearby display and threatened the girl, "You know what'll happen if you move, right? Hey, get a security guard." The customers in the shopping mall started panicking. I stepped in front of Tom and struck before the man could react. My punch landed on his arm, making him drop the pen and release the girl. "Run." The girl immediately ran to a nearby employee for safety. Meanwhile, I executed a spinning kick that hit the man, keeping my leg extended and drawing a circle from the outside in. With the man on the ground, I pinned him down just as Jake returned with the security guard. Seeing the commotion, the customers started applauding as I restrained the man. "Awesome, man. Well done." Despite the chaos, I was just glad the girl was safe. As the security guard took the man away, the situation calmed down, and the girl was already waiting in the security office. "Thank you for saving me. Are you hurt? Don't wander off alone anymore, okay?" Tom and Jake smiled at the girl as she introduced herself. "My name is Emily Blackwood." "Thank you so much." We were asked to stay until her parents arrived, but we had other things to do, so we left. Even after that incident, I was constantly covered in bruises. Dealing with bullies left marks, and although I never started fights, I got injured defending myself. Especially from those trying to catch me off guard. My mother worried, but my father said, "It's proof you're training hard at the dojo." Yeah, lately, I find karate really fun. Scrapes are a badge of honor for a man. You need to get stronger now to protect your loved ones in the future. He proudly believed my injuries were from karate practice. Since that day, I became capable of defending myself, and the bullies gradually started avoiding me. My father got suspicious when I stopped coming home with injuries, but I just told him, "I've gotten better at karate, keeping my fights a secret." I always wanted to become a police officer or a martial artist. However, lacking the necessary skills, I ended up working for a regular company, far removed from karate. I applied for a sales job, thinking my karate training would give me confidence and stamina. But I soon regretted it. I couldn't stand sitting at a desk, and I quickly got bored during the training phase. Without interest, I couldn't learn the job well, and my skills never improved. Noticing this, my boss, Ryan, seemed to have given up on me and tended to skip my training. Whenever I asked questions, he'd wave me off, saying, "Figure it out yourself." It was a terrible attitude for a boss, but it was true I lacked skills, so I kept asking other senior colleagues for help. Then came the opportunity to attend a practical training session with one of Ryan's clients. I was just there for support, but the client seemed to like me a lot. They were so impressed with my appearance that the deal was quickly closed. I don't see what's so great about your girly looks," Ryan sneered at first. But after seeing the client frequently praising me, he grinned as if he had an idea. "Ha, well, it seems you might be useful after all." "What?" Ryan, pleased with the outcome, insisted I accompany him to future meetings. My appearance often helped close deals, boosting Ryan's sales performance. Some clients even requested me as their sales representative, but Ryan would always say, "You're still inexperienced, or you're just eye candy. So just stand by my side and smile, taking credit for my work." Ryan. This is my deal. It's unfair. If you're upset, prove yourself with your skills. You're just a rookie who doesn't know the first thing about sales. Ryan shouted at me in response to my rebuttal. It's true that I don't have the skills right now, so I couldn't argue back. But I wanted to vent my frustration somewhere, so I ended up unloading everything on my parents. I was upset and wanted someone to sympathize with me. While my mother sympathized, my father didn't. He's right. You lack the knowledge and experience, so you have to work several times harder to catch up. His harsh words made me bite my lip in frustration. However, my father's teachings always had a point. I had learned this since I was a child, so I decided to give it my all. Though I hadn't wanted to admit it, it was true that my appearance had played a role in closing those deals. So, I worked hard on things I wasn't good at. Wanting to be recognized for my pure skills, I started wearing glasses to obscure my face a bit, making sure people wouldn't focus on my looks. I diligently studied sales, asking many senior colleagues to teach me the basics all over again. Thanks to these efforts, my skills were gradually acknowledged, and within 3 years, I was promoted to a team leader with 2 to 3 direct subordinates. Considering the average pace, it was quite a rapid rise. Getting all full of yourself. All you've got going for you is your looks. Despite my promotion, Ryan continued to dump loads of menial tasks on me and repeatedly harassed me. But by this time, I had improved enough to handle his attacks with ease, calmly completing all tasks assigned to me. One day, I was told that, due to the client's request, I would be in charge of an important deal that could determine the company's fate. I was to lead, with Ryan as my support, though he was obviously unhappy with this arrangement. However, since the client was our biggest partner, there was no way to overturn their decision. Then, on the evening before the deal, Ryan suddenly told me to revise the materials. What? Why now? I was naturally confused by the sudden demand. Ryan smirked and said, "The meeting's first thing tomorrow morning. Make sure you finish it in time." With that, he left without offering any help. Seriously? No help at all? In the end, I worked until midnight, exhausted, and finally went home. As soon as I got home, I collapsed on my bed and fell asleep. The next morning, I overslept. Oh no! I jumped up, quickly got ready, and headed to the office without breakfast. On the way, I came across a scene I couldn't ignore. No! I saw a suspicious man dragging a high school girl into a narrow alley. I was in a hurry and almost ignored it, heading to work. But when I heard her scream, "Help! Somebody," my body moved on its own. I rushed over, grabbed the man's arm, and pulled him away from the struggling girl. Ignoring the man's menacing glare, I twisted his arm and swept his legs out from under him, making him fall to the ground in pain. Run! While restraining the man, I urged the girl to escape. But she was so scared she couldn't move, trembling uncontrollably. Seeing her shaking, I sighed and said, "This is such a hassle. Stay back," as I moved her out of the alley and stood between her and the man. The man, enraged, came at me, but I aimed for his face and performed a spinning heel kick, knocking him out with one blow. The girl was stunned by my moves. But I tied the unconscious man's hands with my tie and secured him to a street sign post before collapsing to the ground. After ensuring the man couldn't escape, I explained the situation to the gathering bystanders and asked them to call the police. I calmed the still shaking girl and, when the police arrived, I said, "She is still scared, so please delay questioning her. Also, make sure a female officer handles it." After giving them my contact information, I decided to walk her to the nearest station. Once she was safely at the station, I checked my watch and turned pale. Damn! I'm completely late, I muttered under my breath. Hearing this, she looked like she was about to cry. "I'm sorry." "It's my fault, isn't it?" she said. "No, it's not your fault," I reassured her. "Yes, it is. Please, take me to your workplace. I'll apologize with you." She pleaded desperately. I shook my head. "No, you need to go to school. If I walk around with a high school girl in uniform, I'll get in trouble before we even reach my office." I smiled wryly and tried to leave. But she grabbed my arm and insisted. "Wait. At least let me thank you." Her determination left me at a loss, and since I didn't have much time, I quickly wrote my phone number on the back of my business card and handed it to her. Call this number in the evening, okay? She looked relieved, nodded, and waved as she disappeared into the station. I quickly called Ryan. I'm heading directly to the client, I told him. By the time I arrived at the company, the scheduled time had long passed. Naturally, Ryan was waiting with a furious look on his face. Having run at full speed, I was drenched in sweat, my hair was disheveled, and I wasn't even wearing a tie. You're late. And what's with that look? Are you kidding me? He yelled. I'm sorry. Forget it. Go home now. Don't even bother coming back to the office today. You're a nuisance. Ryan was furious, and I couldn't even make excuses. I just handed over the materials I had prepared and said, I'm very sorry. Before heading home for the day. The situation escalated that evening. Because of you, we lost a $5 million deal. How are you going to fix this? You're in big trouble. Be ready for tomorrow. Ryan screamed over the phone. This is it. I'm done. I muttered, letting out a deep sigh. Just then, a call came from an unknown number. Hesitantly, I answered, and it was the high school girl I had helped that morning. I remembered I had told her I'd be available in the evening. Hi, it's me, the high school girl you helped this morning, she said. Oh, from today, I replied. How did things go at work after that? She asked. I hesitated to answer. Well, not so great. After persistent questioning, I ended up telling her about Ryan. I couldn't believe I was venting to a stranger, let alone a high school girl. I must have been really stressed out. What a pathetic story. It's my fault you're in such a mess. Can you meet me now? I want to hear more, she pressed. I was bewildered. No, I can't really. No. I can't accept that, she insisted. But talking to you won't help. If you don't talk to me, I'll go to your company myself. Seeing her determination, I reluctantly agreed to meet at a nearby cafe. When I arrived after changing, I found not only her but also an older man in a high-end suit. I tensed up immediately. Even just standing there, the man had an intimidating aura, and it was clear he was no ordinary person. Hey, she called out to me. Are you Alex? Yes, I am. I am Henry Blackwood, this girl's grandfather. Thank you very much for saving my granddaughter. No, I only did what anyone would do. His polite gratitude made me feel embarrassed. And this is the second time you've saved her. I can't thank you enough. What? The second time. I tilted my head in thought. I didn't think I had rescued people that often. Hey. It's me, Emily. Emily Blackwood. Don't you remember? Emily interrupted, stepping between Henry and me. Emily? Oh. Emily Blackwood from 8 years ago? The girl at the shopping center? Yes. You saved me back then too. All the adults were just passing by. Her words brought back memories from 8 years ago. I couldn't hide my surprise at this coincidence or twist of fate. Well, please have a seat. Would you like some coffee? Yes, thank you. Standing around in a cafe would attract attention. So I sat down as Henry suggested. Emily has often been targeted by bad adults due to family circumstances. She's been through multiple kidnapping attempts since she was little. Henry's serious tone made me shudder. To be honest, I'm the head of the Blackwood group. People see my granddaughter as an easy target to make me comply with their demands. I remembered that the Blackwood group was one of the wealthiest families in the country. I had envied rich families, but hearing this made me realize they have their own struggles. She's been through a lot because of it. Grandpa, I'm okay, Emily said reassuringly. You're such a good girl, Emily. Henry's expression was gentle as he patted Emily's head. Then he turned to me with a serious look. Alex, I heard you faced trouble because of my granddaughter. Please accept this as an apology. He took out a thick envelope from his jacket pocket and placed it on the table. I could easily guess what was inside, having seen such scenes on TV. I was startled. No, I can't accept this. As I refused, Henry looked at Emily. This is troubling. What should we do, Emily? Emily whispered something in his ear. And then smiled at me. I've been looking for you all this time, she said. Ah, I have a proposal for you. Henry made a surprising proposal. Though it confused me, Emily pleaded, now, I want to help you, and I hesitantly agreed. The next morning, when I arrived at the office, Ryan eagerly called me to the conference room. Before I could even say good morning, he spoke. Hey, Alex. Remember what I told you yesterday? Yes. Good. Listen up. You're being demoted and you will be transferred to the Florida branch. For some reason, Ryan laughed as he said this. Oh, and by Florida, I mean a remote island. So basically, you're being demoted. Well, at least you're not fired, thanks to me. Despite his condescending tone, I replied without changing my expression. No need. I'm quitting today, I said. Then I handed in my prepared resignation letter. What? Are you sure? You'll regret it, Ryan sneered. I won't. You think a guy like you, with only his looks, will find another job? You'll just end up a recluse. Ha, what a joke. He mocked me contemptuously. Just then, our president, Mr. Johnson, rushed into the sales department, looking flustered. Ah, Mr. Johnson. I was just telling this fool about his demotion. What? What did you say? Seeing Mr. Johnson's pale face, I watched as he turned to Ryan and shouted. What are you doing? It's not Alex who's getting demoted. It's you, Ryan. What? At that mother end, Henry walked in. Who? Who are you? Ryan stammered. This is Henry Blackwood, the head of the Blackwood Group, Mr. Johnson introduced. What? The client from yesterday's deal was a subsidiary of a company owned by the Blackwood Group. After hearing from Emily, Henry immediately contacted the client and offered to continue the contract on the condition that Ryan was demoted and I was recruited. Mr. Johnson accepted Henry's offer. Ryan, you're the one being transferred to the Florida branch and demoted, Mr. Johnson declared. This is outrageous. Ryan protested. But his misdeeds had already been reported to Mr. Johnson, leaving Ryan with no way out. Though he initially accepted the demotion, Ryan didn't want to be sent to a remote area. He resigned before the transfer process began, while still holding the title of department head. Unable to find a new job, Ryan ended up working part-time at a convenience store, where some former colleagues saw him. Rumors spread, and colleagues visited the store to mock him, causing him to eventually move away. Meanwhile, I was offered a position at a company under the Blackwood Group and was invited to live with the Blackwood family for training. When Henry and Emily personally visited my parents to greet them, they were astonished. Your son has saved my granddaughter twice, Henry said. My mother smiled proudly, and my father nodded with pride. He has the potential to become an even greater man. Please allow me to take him under my wing, Henry requested. My father said respectfully. This is an incredible offer. Please take care of my son. With that, they gladly sent me off. Emily was excited, saying, we can live under the same roof from today, but I was still bewildered. This was because Henry's proposal included me becoming Emily's potential husband. I tried to use the age difference as an excuse, but Emily wouldn't budge. I don't care about that. I have been determined to marry you since the first time you saved me, she insisted. From back then? You were just a child, I said. First love knows no age. Besides, the age difference is only 8 years. That's nothing for celebrities, Emily argued. Henry also pushed strongly, saying, Emily's partner needs to be strong. Alex is perfect with his skills and experience. My parents quickly approved, leaving no room for opposition, making our relationship official. I couldn't keep up with the rapid developments, but I decided to set a boundary. At least wait until you graduate high school before we date, I said. Okay. As Emily gave a cheerful reply and hugged my arm, I thought to myself, I'm glad I took up karate. And I was grateful to my father for encouraging me to continue. My name is Kenneth. I'm 33 years old. I graduated from high school and joined my current company, where I'd been an idle employee at a rural branch for 15 years. When I was in middle school, my father passed away. I wanted to start working after middle school, but my mother, crying, begged me, please at least graduate from high school. Although I wanted to ease my mother's burden by working early, I decided to honor her wishes and attended high school. We couldn't afford college, and I thought taking a student loan would delay my working years by 4. So I begged my mother to let me work right after high school. My mother, understanding my feelings, said, in this era, having just a high school diploma might make life tough, but Anne agreed. In high school, I worked part-time at a company run by my relatives. I had other part-time jobs too, but my relatives kindly employed me. I told my relatives I planned to work full-time after high school, so they taught me various professional manners. Though sometimes strict, I appreciated their guidance, knowing it was preparation for the real world. I am currently at a rural branch. I create internal newsletters and manage documents there. It's a so-called an idle position. Being assigned here means no chance of promotion. In fact, it's known that during layoffs, employees from this department are the first to be let go. Around me are people who cause trouble in other departments, have poor performance, or have frequent tardiness and absences. Essentially problem employees. I didn't cause any trouble myself. I just caught the eye of a certain boss. There was a college graduate, Amy, 1 year younger than me, who joined the company after me. When I was still at the main office, we worked in the same department. Back then, I was 24 and she was 23. Amy was a very cute woman. She was popular in the company. And there was Kent, 2 years older than me. He was an elite graduate from Harvard, a famous university. Amy also graduated from Harvard, making them senior and junior. Apparently, when Amy was a freshman, Kent was a senior, and they had dated once. Kent boasted about it. However, another Harvard graduate said Kent's intense advances couldn't be rejected by Amy, leading to a brief one-week relationship before Amy broke up with him. I was listening to all that talk with a hum. College graduates generally didn't care about those of us with just a high school diploma. There was a sense that they looked down on us. Being aware of this, I kept my distance from college graduates. However, I became Amy's mentor when she was a new hire. Though only 1 year older, I had 5 more years of work experience. It seemed fitting. People say I'm good at taking care of others. I tend to consider others' situations too much. When my father passed away, I also considered my mother's situation too much and offered to start working after middle school. I have a habit of prioritizing others over myself. Amy seemed to like this about me. She followed me around with a stool. It's common for newbies to follow their mentors around. So, I didn't think much of it. But one day, Kent called me out. Hey, Kenneth. Don't get cocky. At first, I didn't understand what he meant. So, I asked him honestly. I don't know what you're talking about, I said. Apparently, my attitude irritated him. His face turned red as he said, I know you've been following Amy around. Amy. Who was that? I remembered there was one person. Are you talking about Amy? Yes. I heard you're using your position as her mentor to keep her close like your personal assistant. What? What was he talking about? I was dumbfounded. If she was following me around, that made sense. But me following her? How could anyone see it that way? And we only talk about work 99% of the time. The other 1% is just I'm hungry or what's the weather like tomorrow. Only talking about work would be awkward. It's a completely professional relationship. We only talk about work, I said. Don't lie. You're abusing your position. I'm going to report you to HR for misconduct. Go ahead. I believe Amy will clear my name during the investigation. I said. I truly believe that. A few days later, there was indeed an inquiry from HR, conducted by Henry. Both Amy and I answered normally. She said, this seems strange. Are they questioning all new hires, while tilting her head? I had an idea but said, who knows, and tilted my head along with her. After a while, Henry called me directly on the internal line. Kenneth, there's a report that you told Amy not to say anything that would be detrimental to you during the inquiry. What? I was shocked. I never said anything like that to Amy. There must be a mistake, I said. We received a tip, he replied. Who said that? It's not true at all. I can't reveal the source. So, HR will have someone monitor you. Your boss has also been told to keep an eye on you. Okay. I hung up. I hadn't done anything wrong. So I should just continue as usual. But the thought of being watched made me uneasy. Not just that. Knowing my boss would be watching me with suspicion was unsettling. I had worked so hard for the company. It was frustrating, but I couldn't think of a way to prove my innocence. A few days later, Henry called me again. Kenneth, we're removing you from your position as Amy's mentor. Excuse me? I was shocked. It was too sudden. Why? We received information from your boss that you're using your position to manipulate Amy. What? My boss. Was it Curtis, the division manager, or Sage, the section manager? Or perhaps I had one person in mind. Was it Mark? Mark, the supervisor, was drinking buddies with Kent. They were peers and Mark became a supervisor right after Kent, who was the fastest to get promoted. They were close. Maybe they were colluding behind the scenes. I can't say who. But expect a formal notification from your boss. Okay. And if this happens again, there will be consequences. Understood? Understood. Amy, beside me, looked puzzled. She couldn't possibly imagine that I was being reprimanded by HR for supposedly abusing my power over her. My mind went blank. Then Sage called out to me. As you probably heard from HR, we're removing you from your position as Amy's mentor. If anything like this happens again, I won't be able to protect you. What? Amy, beside me, looked surprised. Amy, I'm sorry for not keeping a closer eye on things. What do you mean? Amy, come with me. I'll be your mentor from now on. What? Mark grabbed Amy's hand as she stood confused. Seeing this, I realized it was indeed Kent and Mark who leaked the false information. I was forbidden from any interaction with Amy and was transferred to another department the next month. Several months passed. After work, Amy called me to meet at the emergency stairs. I didn't go. I continued working late and returned to the locker room around 8 p.m. 2 hours has passed after the end of work at 6 p.m. I didn't expect Amy to still be there. Amy. She was there. In the cold, her ears, cheeks, and fingers were red. She turned around at my voice. And she said happily, Kenneth. I couldn't help but run to her. I handed her a can of coffee I had bought for myself. Here, hold this. It's warm. Amy smiled, holding the can with both hands. I'm glad you came. She did nothing wrong. Thinking that made my chest hurt. She was forbidden from talking to me without understanding why and called me out to find out the reason. I decided not to meet her because I didn't want to cause her more trouble or be falsely accused of anything else. I thought if I didn't show up at the agreed time, she would give up and go home. But she waited for me the whole time. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I apologized repeatedly, biting my lip. Why do we have to go through this? We didn't do anything wrong. Amy, if someone sees us, it'll be bad. Let's part ways and go home. Why? Why are we in this situation? I don't know, but someone. At that moment. What are you doing there? Henry spotted us and raised his voice. I heard voices, so I came to check. What are you doing on the emergency stairs? You are. Henry looked at me. Aren't you Kenneth from the blacklist? I was on the blacklist? It was over. Honestly, I couldn't think straight. Henry's outburst drew the attention of other HR staff working overtime nearby. From there, it was a blur. The story became that I was trying to do something to Amy on the emergency stairs. That incident led to my transfer to a rural branch the following week. Amy was given a few weeks off until I was transferred, so we didn't see each other again. I didn't know her personal contact details, and she didn't know mine. We were separated without being able to do anything. 9 years passed since then. I'd been working as an idle employee at the rural branch ever since. At first, I thought I'd quit such an unfair company. But as a high school graduate, finding a better job was nearly impossible. I couldn't stop sending money to my mother, so I continued working at this company, numbing my feelings. Before I knew it, 9 years had passed. My current rural department is free from toxic atmosphere, quotas, or long overtime hours, and is very peaceful. It's calm and warm. Everyone works at their own pace and is relaxed. That's the kind of workplace it is. At first, I thought, as rumored, that the employees here were all problem children. I assumed they couldn't do their jobs well. But as I worked, I started noticing, moments. The people in this department weren't particularly incompetent or had bad behavior. Curious, I subtly asked around. I found out most were transferred here due to false accusations. They were framed by bosses or colleagues, labeled as problematic, and sent to this department. I always excelled at tedious tasks, so creating internal newsletters and organizing documents suited me. I kept working diligently at my own pace. But I was relegated to this static job as a high school graduate. Moreover, with the false reputation of having a bad character, no woman would be interested in me. So, I've been living in the countryside, working hard without a girlfriend all this time. Before I turned 30, I was anxious about my marriage since many of my old classmates got married. But after turning 30, I started feeling that it was okay to stay single. Marriage shouldn't be forced. One day, the document organization section manager, Tyler, approached me. "Kenneth, how are you today? An elite manager from the main office is coming this Friday. She's a relative of the chairman and apparently a top-notch woman in the company. So, I need you to prepare the materials for her. Can you do that?" "What? By Friday?" "That's practically just 2 days." It was Tuesday afternoon. After finishing today's work, I'd only have Wednesday and Thursday. Could I manage that? "Yeah, I know. But we just got the notice from the head office. It's a bit of a harassment, thinking we're just a static department. But let's create some amazing materials and show them what we can do." "Ha ha. I understand. So, can I work overtime starting today?" "Oh, no, that's not possible. We don't have the budget for overtime." That's what payroll told us. They think an idle department like ours doesn't need overtime. Tyler said in his laid-back manner and then left, saying, "Good luck." I planned to finish my daily tasks within work hours and work on the materials after hours. But overtime was prohibited. What was I supposed to do? At that moment, I heard the conversation. "I'll handle your current tasks, so focus on preparing the materials for Friday. I'll take care of this work. You can count on me." "What? But..." I feel bad. As I hesitated, my seniors, Noah and Jason, smiled and patted me on the back. "Don't worry. You have the important task of creating impressive materials for the inspection. Leave the rest to us." Encouraged by their kindness, I worked frantically on the materials. I used all the limited time and created what I believed to be the best possible materials. On Thursday before the end of the day, I submitted them to Tyler. Amazing. To produce such materials in such a short time. Tyler, impressed, said with a voice filled with admiration. Then he smiled at me. "Thank you, Kenneth." "No, it was thanks to the support and cooperation of everyone around me. It's all because of them. Don't be so modest. It's the truth." But was this material good enough? I was anxious. Tyler, my colleagues, and my seniors were impressed. But I had been away from the main office for a long time. In the main office, this might be considered low-level work. Everyone in this branch had been far removed from the intense, high-level environment of the main office. So, I worried that our standards had dropped significantly. I was very anxious. But I couldn't do any better. If this wasn't good enough, there was nothing more I could do. I braced myself and waited for the next day. However, I had no idea what would happen with this material. Friday arrived. The elite manager from the main office came. Her name was Karen. She was a year younger than me. A college graduate a year younger than me. It stung a little. She must have been a classmate of Amy. She was very beautiful. Amy had a cute look, but Karen was an elegant, cool beauty. Her intelligence showed in everything she did. I was about to hand over the materials to such a person. And accompanying her was Kent. He was now an assistant manager. When Kent saw me, he gave a triumphant smirk. Are the materials ready? Although Tyler was supposed to be higher in rank, Kent spoke to him condescendingly. Tyler accepted this. Well, Kenneth. Tyler said to me, looking nervous. I quietly said yes and handed the materials to Karen. She slightly smiled and said, thank you. Then she began reviewing the materials on the spot. She read them silently, and after a while, she turned to Tyler with a stern expression. Tyler, who made these materials? Tyler, whose name was called, stiffened visibly. Yes, this was made by Kenneth here. What? You made this? Yes, I did. I nodded. Karen looked puzzled, comparing me with the materials. Karen, my apologies for the inconvenience. Forget about this lowly employee and let's move on, Kent said, giving me a contemptuous look. And a sneer. Karen, with a somewhat dazed expression, moved on to the next department. It was a small branch, so as I went about my regular duties, I kept encountering Karen and Kent. Each time, Karen gave me a curious look. Eventually, Karen settled in our department, sitting in a conference room. As I was working quietly, Tyler called me. Kenneth, Karen wants to see you. Called out, I headed to the conference room. There, Karen sat with Kent sitting one seat apart from her. I'm Kenneth, I said. Please sit, Karen told me, indicating the seat opposite her. Why are you in such a rural place? What is your position? I'm a regular employee. I can't believe it. Karen looked incredulous. I was surprised by her reaction. I've never seen such excellent materials. With all due respect, Karen, there are plenty of people in our company who can produce this level of materials. Kent laughed as he said this. Kent, did you really read these materials? Huh? Of course. Kent's eyes darted nervously. Then you should know, right? The sources cited in these materials. Or do you not know? The sources cited in these materials are from a recent scientific journal, right? And it's from UK, which is a newly released one. It's very niche. Circulated only among specialists. I had always been interested in the field, so I decided to immerse myself in it. You say that easily, but the new research in this field, the important studies that only experts understand, they're filled with technical jargon. This is from a scientific journal. Only someone with a deep understanding could decipher this. Who exactly are you? I was at a loss. Who was I, indeed? As I hesitated, Karen added. And it's not just science. This part here. This is at the level of an international lawyer. You need knowledge of law and the ability to interpret scientific papers. It's impossible without both. I have obtained qualifications as an international lawyer. I answered honestly. I couldn't meet Karen's eyes. Her intense beauty was overwhelming. What? Kent shouted in disbelief. I had no choice but to continue. After being assigned to this department, I realized I had a lot of free time. So, I decided to go to university. There's a well-performing international university here, the university. Its law faculty is the only one that prepares for the international lawyer exam. So, I studied there. You mean you worked full-time and attended university to get an international lawyer qualification? Karen held her head in her hands and shook it from side to side. You have such vast knowledge. Where did you get this scientific knowledge? It came naturally from studying various past cases. I can't believe such an amazing person is just a regular employee. Kenneth, would you like to return to the main office? Karen. Bringing someone like him to the main office would tarnish its prestige. You didn't understand Kenneth's materials at all. If I had to choose between the two of you, I'd definitely choose Kenneth. Kent was taken aback by her words. Thank you for the offer, but as you can see, I've spent 9 years away from the main office environment. I might be more of a hindrance if I returned. What are you talking about? You're far more suited to a managerial position than I am. After a few rounds of back and forth, I finally gave in to her determination. I would return to the main office after 9 years. I felt like Rip Van Winkle. As I left the conference room, my colleagues and seniors, who had overheard the conversation, congratulated me. I was really fortunate to have such great companions. I almost cried. I would return to the main office on Monday. I felt my legs tremble as I headed to work. I could see the emergency stairs from that time, where I was found talking to Amy. My heart ached. I wondered what had happened to Amy. All employees could access the organizational chart, so I could check. I occasionally looked to see where Amy was. She was now 32. It wouldn't be surprising if she were married. But her last name hadn't changed. Some people keep their maiden names after marriage. Given how cute she was probably married. Or she had found someone great. What was I thinking? I stopped myself. Right. Amy and I didn't have anything between us. Nothing at all. Kenneth. A voice called from behind. On my way to the entrance, I realized who it was before I turned around. I slowly turned. In front of me stood Amy, whom I hadn't seen in 9 years. She had become much more mature. But she still had the same delicate charm. She started crying in front of me. I hurried over to her and handed her a handkerchief. I didn't want to get into trouble on my first day back by making a woman cry in such a public place. What should I do? Kenneth, it's really you. Amy smiled through her tears. I couldn't help but smile too. We agreed to meet after work. I wasn't afraid of Kent anymore. I had been called back to the main office as a manager. I could stand up to Kent's harassment with my new position. After 6 p.m., we met at the agreed place. Seeing her waiting in the cold reminded me of 9 years ago. I pretended to hold a can of coffee as I approached her. Here, warm up with this. I extended my hand as if I were holding a can of coffee. To my surprise, she took my hand. Your hand is warm, Kenneth. We held hands and walked to the restaurant area. We talked about the truth behind the incident 9 years ago and what had happened in our lives since then. Amy told me she had always liked me. I think I fell for you while you were mentoring me. I caused you so much trouble because of it. I'm really sorry for everything that happened because of me. Amy suddenly stopped and apologized deeply while looking down. It wasn't your fault. Please, lift your head, I said gently. She cautiously looked up. Did you carry that guilt for 9 years? Maybe that's why she was still single. She hadn't dated anyone in those 9 years. Then, please forget about it. Be free. Okay? I'm sorry for these 9 years. No, it's not that. I haven't dated anyone in these 9 years because, Amy fidgeted. Kenneth, I love. Before she could finish, I spoke. I love you, Amy. Amy's eyes widened. Tears streamed down her face. Me too. That's how Amy and I became a couple. In those 9 years, I had many experiences. But each one shaped who I am today. At first glance, some events might seem unlucky. But looking back, they might have been good turning points. Perhaps, turning misfortunes into allies makes one stronger. With such thoughts, I went to sleep that night. Amy now holds a supervisory position at the main office. Moreover, Amy. About these materials. Yes, Kenneth. Amy and I are working in the same department again. Most of the HR people from back then are no longer in the department. So, a reinvestigation of past incidents was conducted. Amy and I were interviewed. With the help of many people, I was finally proven innocent regarding the past incident. Amy had grown into a very dependable supervisor over those 9 years. We've kept our relationship a secret at work. Even though we're not at an age where we need to hide it, it just feels right. When we're alone, we talk. I never thought I'd get to work under you again, Kenneth. Me neither, Amy. I thought I'd be stuck at that branch until retirement. But the people at the branch were nice too, right? Yeah, they were. After my case was proven to be a wrongful accusation, I strongly requested reinvestigations for the others at the branch. It turned out that most of them had been falsely accused as well. Due to HR's mistakes, those sent to the branch were offered suitable positions, but most declined. They said they preferred the relaxed work at the branch. The numerous wrongful accusations prompted a quick overhaul of the system. In that process, I was promoted to department head. 2 months after becoming department head, I proposed to Amy. She tearfully accepted. Anne, Isabella, John. When I called out, I heard voices from upstairs saying yes. Amy and I got married, and our daughter Isabella was born the following year. 2 years later, our son John was born. Now, the four of us live happily together. We bought a house with a garden, and both of us still work at the same company. We make sure to go somewhere every weekend. Kids grow up fast. They keep getting bigger and bigger. This moment only happens now. I've come to cherish the present moment. The seemingly secluded life at the rural branch now feels like a distant memory. I never thought I would get married. Apparently, my mother didn't think so either. Having lost her husband young, I bought my mother an apartment near our house. It's a 2-bedroom place. I worried that being too close might make Amy feel suffocated, but my mother and Amy get along very well. Now, they are like real mother and daughter. I'm really glad I was able to let my mother hold her grandchildren. Life is truly unpredictable. Karen, who gave me a turning point, is now working hard as a department head. I also want to work hard for my precious family and cherish the time spent with them on weekends. Hey everyone! Look who's here, Mr. Low Education. Mike's obnoxious voice echoed through the reunion hall. He was practically shouting, mocking me as loudly as he could. Our former classmates began turning to see what was happening. I couldn't understand why Mike remained so unpleasant just as he was back in the day, and frankly I didn't want to understand. I could only sigh in frustration. Seeing no reaction from me, Mike's taunts escalated. A guy like you with a low education doesn't belong to this reunion. What are you even doing here? Even I couldn't stay silent any longer with his insults to me. It was time to tell Mike the real reason why I attended this reunion. I decided to finally speak up. Suddenly, Mike, who had been so full of himself, started trembling and collapsed to his knees. My name is Thomas, and I'm 33 years old. Currently, I work as an investigator for a small detective agency. I've always admired my father, who worked as a police officer. He was assigned to patrol duty, often engaging with the community and participating in service activities. Therefore, my father was a police officer loved by everyone. My mother supported him, and we lived happily as a family. My father always told me that if I wanted to become a police officer, I had to study hard, so I did. As a result, I was able to pass the entrance exam for a prestigious private middle school. I vowed to work even harder to become a police officer like my father, but then something happened on the day of the entrance ceremony. Since my father was at work, I attended the ceremony with my mother. There were many luxury cars parked in front of the school gate. While I was astonished by the sight, a boy and his mother, likely there for the ceremony as well, got out of one of the cars. The boy looked at me with a smirk. His mother then approached my mother. "Lisa, it's been so long. I didn't know they'd end up at the same middle school. Can you afford such an expensive school?" The boy's mother sounded condescending. My mother, unfazed, replied with a smile, "Yes, it's for my son's dream. We'll manage just fine. I don't want to be at the same school as you. Don't bother me too much." The boy glared at me. His mother told her son while laughing, "Don't worry, you probably won't have to interact with poor people like them." My mother responded to the spiteful pair with, "I look forward to the years ahead." She looked sad, though. The boy's mother snickered and walked away with her son. "What unpleasant people." I whispered to my mother, "Do you know those people?" They seem really awful. My mother looked at me with a wry smile. The boy's father is your father's colleague. You've met them before, but you probably don't remember. That boy's name is Mike. I didn't remember Mike at all. What? How can someone who's also a police officer like Dad look down on us like that? As I wasn't able to comprehend, I pressed my mother for an explanation. She looked troubled. He used to be a much nicer person. And then, she began to tell me about the unpleasant Mike and his family. Mike's father had entered the police academy at the same time as my father and became a police officer. During their training period, they were good friends and often hung out together. But a few years later, my father chose to work at a local police station to engage with the community, while Mike's father chose to become a detective. At first, our families remained close, but gradually we drifted apart. My father had become a police officer with just a high school diploma, while Mike's father graduated from a prestigious college and worked as an elite detective. As they continued in their careers, they no longer had much in common. Mike's father earned a significantly higher salary than my father, and Mike's mother's personality changed dramatically. As my mother sadly explained, "Can money really change a person's character?" I listened intently to my mother's story. "You must never judge people by their money or status, Thomas. Promise me you'll never be like that," my mother said, looking me in the eye. At that moment, I vowed never to become like Mike's family. I decided to avoid Mike as much as possible in middle school. After the entrance ceremony, I walked into the classroom with that resolve. My mother and I were both shocked. Mike was seated right next to me. This must be some kind of cruel joke. I cursed my luck. Mike looked at me with a disgusted expression. "You've got to be kidding. Having a poor kid like you next to me is going to make it impossible to concentrate." I wanted to throw those words right back at him. I didn't want to sit next to him either. Then, as if joining in on Mike's taunts, his mother said, "Thomas, don't you dare interfere with my son." Did they both just want to look down on me? I was too stunned to respond. My first day of middle school turned out to be a nightmare. On the way home, my mother looked at me with concern. "Do you think you can get along with Mike?" After thinking for a moment, I replied, "I don't think we'll be friends, but I'll try not to get involved with him too much." My mother looked slightly relieved. In truth, I never wanted to have anything to do with such rude people again, but being in the same class, I had no choice. Still, I was filled with anxiety about my new life in middle school. And my fears came true. The next day, my worried mother saw me off to school. When I arrived, I found Mike's belongings on my desk. Mike was chatting happily with other classmates. This is my seat," I said hesitantly to Mike. But he ignored me, even though I was sure he heard me. I spoke even louder to him again. "Hey! This is my seat." Mike turned to me with a smirk. "Oops, my bad. I thought your seat was for storing my stuff," he said mockingly and began to remove his things from my desk. I was filled with anger. However, causing a scene here would only make things worse. I tried so hard to keep my emotions in check. Mike laughed at me and walked away. I could only sigh. The thought of spending 3 years with someone like him was suffocating. Could I really get through this? I felt increasingly anxious. Just then, a classmate approached my desk and started talking to me. "Mike was giving you a hard time already. Don't mind him. He's always like that." It was Jacob, who sat behind me. He had graduated from the same elementary school as Mike and told me that Mike had bullied him in the past, too. He's always bragging about his wealth and making everyone else feel small. Jacob stood up for me. From that point on, Mike continued to hurl insults at me, but Jacob always had my back, making my time in middle school more bearable. My middle school had a high school attached, so inevitably, Mike and I ended up in the same high school. But with friends who supported me, I wasn't as worried. By the time we reached senior year, I was unsure about my future path. I wondered if I should go to college to become a police officer like my father. My father had become a police officer with just a high school diploma. If I were to follow in his footsteps, I wouldn't need to go to college. Even if you want to be a police officer, having a good education is important. "I want you to go to college," my mother insisted. My father, in contrast, said, "Thomas, it's your life. Do what you want. Your mother and I will support whatever decision you make." Hearing this from my father, I decided not to go to college. "Thomas, you're not going to college?" Jacob asked with wide-eyed. I explained that I wanted to become a police officer like my father and would take the exam after high school. Jacob, surprised but supportive, said, "Wow, Thomas. That's awesome. Good luck." Then a familiar and unpleasant voice interrupted. "Not going to college? You just don't want to study, do you? You'll never become a police officer. Stop joking around." Mike's words stung. I knew I wasn't exceptionally smart or athletic. I was well aware that I might not become a police officer. Hearing it from Mike made it even more painful. Seeing this, Jacob raised his voice in my defense. "Mike, that's too much. You don't know if he can make it until he tries." "What, can you see the future now?" Mike snorted at Jacob's words. "There's no way a scrawny guy like him can be a police officer. If people like him become one, we're doomed. Jacob, you should choose your friends more wisely. Thomas is my best friend. And I doubt you have anyone you'd call a friend. Your personality is the reason why." Jacob grabbed my arm and led me away from Mike. I was deeply moved by Jacob's words. "I consider you my best friend too, Jacob. I'll work hard for the police exam. I'll prove Mike wrong." Jacob smiled and nodded yes. However, my dream quickly crumbled. Despite my efforts, I failed the police exam. I was devastated, and the tears wouldn't stop. Seeing this, my father said gently, "There are many ways to help people besides being a police officer. Failing one exam isn't the end. You're full of potential." My father always knew the right thing to say. I respected him deeply. As expected, Mike belittled me even more when he found out I hadn't passed the police exam. "I knew you were useless." I had no retort. On the day of my high school graduation, I left the school as if I were fleeing. I didn't want to hear anything more from Mike. After graduating, I believed I would never have to see the annoying Mike again. I was convinced of that. After graduation, I followed my father's advice and searched for a job where I could help others. That's when I found a small detective agency. Being a detective involves investigating on behalf of clients who are troubled. I thought this could be a way for me to help people. With this in mind, I went for an interview. The person who interviewed me was Mary, the female director of the agency. I passionately explained my reasons for wanting the job, and Mary hired me on the spot. At first, my parents were surprised that I took a job at a detective agency, but now they support me. I joined the agency with no experience in detective work, but Mary patiently taught me everything, and I quickly became competent at my job. 15 years later, I had become proficient in my work. One day, a woman named Jessica came to our agency for a consultation. "I think my fiancé might be cheating on me. Could you investigate?" Jessica spoke with tears in her eyes, looking very sad. More than half of the people who come to our agency seek help with infidelity investigations. They all have sad expressions on their faces. Somehow, I want to make them smile. I always conduct my research with that feeling in mind. "I understand. I will investigate thoroughly." Hearing my words, Jessica began to cry. "No matter the outcome, I just want to know the truth." "Thank you, Thomas." She said this while gripping my hand. I couldn't stand the thought of someone betraying such a wonderful woman. Determined to resolve this case, I began the investigation. Being a detective is not easy. I gather as much information as possible about the subject, stake out, conduct interviews, and sometimes go undercover depending on the situation. My work hours are irregular, with early mornings and late nights. But I never found it burdensome. The gratitude I received from clients at the end of an investigation made it all worthwhile. I planned to start the stakeout on Jessica's fiancé the next day. However, when I woke up, my mother looked distressed. "Thomas, I think I've thrown out my back. It hurts so much I can't stand up." She was clutching her back in pain. "My father works at the police station, so he can't take time off." I contacted Mary and decided to take my mother to the hospital that day. Despite her back pain, I managed to get my mother into the car and headed to the orthopedic clinic. My mother had always been healthy and had never needed to go to the hospital before. Therefore, I visited an orthopedic clinic I found on the internet. The clinic was very clean and well maintained. I helped my mother to a sofa in the waiting room and completed the registration. In no time, my mother's name was called, and I accompanied her to the examination room. To my shock, the doctor was none other than Mike. My mother was equally stunned, her eyes wide with surprise. "Thomas." As soon as Mike saw me, he exclaimed in surprise. "Mike! I didn't know you were a doctor here." When I said this, Mike started laughing. "While you were messing around with just a high school diploma, I was studying hard and graduated from medical school. Thanks to my abilities, I became a doctor and even own my own clinic. It's not too late for you to start studying, Thomas." My mother and I were both stunned by Mike's words. Even after 15 years, Mike hadn't changed at all. Feeling bewildered, I watched as Mike began examining my mother with the efficiency of a conveyor belt. During the examination, he continued to make condescending remarks towards me. "You didn't become a police officer because you're incompetent. If you were as talented as I am, things would be different." Even the nurse in the examination room looked shocked by his comments. Both my mother and I just wanted to leave the clinic as quickly as possible. After the examination, we rushed out of the room, only to hear Mike and the nurse laughing behind us. "That guy? He was my classmate, but he's just a high school graduate. Can you believe it? Unbelievable." I was seething with anger. What's so bad about being a high school graduate? I wasn't causing any harm to anyone. My body began to shake with rage. Seeing my state, my mother whispered, "Thomas, calm down. That man is a terrible person. It's not worth your time to respond to him. People like him will get a bad karma eventually." Bad karma, yes. I hoped Mike would get what he deserved. After settling the bill, I returned home with a heavy heart. Before entering the house, I checked the mailbox and found a postcard inside. My name was written on the address. A postcard for me? Curiously, I opened it and saw it was an invitation to a middle school reunion. It was also accompanied by a note that "We hope you will join us." A reunion! I had mixed feelings about it. Mike would likely be there. Who knows what he'd say this time? The memory of Mike's behavior at the clinic flashed through my mind. Just then, my phone rang. "Hello? Jacob. It's been a while. What's up?" It was a call from Jacob after a long time. Even after graduating high school, I kept in touch with Jacob a few times a year. He sounded excited on the phone. "You got the reunion invitation, right? You're coming, right?" Hearing his words, I felt conflicted. I want to, but Mike will probably be there, and I'm not sure if I want to deal with that. Jacob, however, was adamant about convincing me. "Don't let that stop you. The reunion is at that fancy hotel. Let's have some good drinks and reminisce." "All right, I'll go." With Jacob's enthusiastic persuasion, I decided to attend the reunion. Even though I had decided, my heart wasn't in it. I really didn't want to see Mike again. Nevertheless, the day of the reunion was approaching fast. I even took the day off work for it. Mary smiled and said, "Enjoy your reunion. Have a great time," but honestly, I wasn't looking forward to it. On the morning of the reunion, I reluctantly started getting ready. My mother, concerned, had bought me a new shirt for the occasion, so I put it on. It was the first time since becoming an adult that my mother had bought me clothes. "You look great. Walk into that reunion with confidence. Don't let Mike get to you." She looked me straight in the eye as she said this. Though my mother had always maintained a calm demeanor in front of Mike, every time he said something cruel to me, it broke her heart. "Don't worry, Mom. There's no way I'll let Mike beat me." That's right. With my mother seeing me off, I left the house and headed to the fancy hotel where the reunion was being held. When I arrived and entered the restaurant, many of my former classmates were already there. Jacob spotted me and eagerly approached. "Hey! Glad you made it. Let's have some good drinks and catch up." He handed me a glass of wine. As we toasted, I noticed some commotion at the back of the restaurant. I looked over and saw Mike standing with a beautiful woman. Mike was introducing her to our classmates. "This is my fiancée, Rachel. She's the daughter of the director of T Hospital. We're getting married soon. And her father is going to invest a lot of money into my clinic. My clinic is going to expand even more," Mike boasted to our classmates. They looked at him with envy, amazed that he was marrying such a beautiful and wealthy woman. I quickly turned my attention back to Jacob. I thought nothing good would come from being involved with Mike. But Mike soon noticed me and shouted loudly, "Hey everyone! Look who decided to show up, Mr. Low Education." The restaurant buzzed with excitement, and all eyes turned to me. I instinctively looked down. Why did I have to be humiliated by Mike at what was supposed to be a fun reunion? As I remained silent, Mike continued to hurl insults. "This reunion isn't for someone like you with no education. Why are you even here?" Mike approached me arrogantly. I could feel my body trembling with anger. Jacob, noticing this, couldn't stay silent. He shouted angrily, "Mike, that's enough. Don't you know there's a line you shouldn't cross? You're 33 years old, for goodness sake." But Mike wasn't fazed by Jacob's words. Instead, he laughed. "What I'm saying is the truth. This reunion is for elites." Mike then glared at me. It's true that many of our classmates had high-paying jobs, but there was a better way to express it. To make matters worse, Mike began to insult my parents. "Well, your parents were probably just as uneducated and useless. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree." That was the last straw. I couldn't understand why someone who didn't know my parents well would speak so poorly of them. My parents are not useless. The one who's useless is you, Mike. What did you say? Mike's face turned red with anger, and his expression grew harsher. Rachel, standing next to him, looked confused. "I didn't come to this reunion to see you, Mike. Seeing you was the last thing I wanted to do." "Then why did you come?" "Because I have something to tell you." I glared at Mike. He laughed derisively. "What could you possibly want to say? Are you going to ask for a job at my clinic?" "Sorry, but we don't hire high school graduates." Good grief. Mike is really a clueless guy. Sometimes, people like him need to be confronted with the truth. "No, that's not it. I can tell you now, but are you sure you want to hear it?" "What the hell are you talking about? Just spit it out." I took a deep breath and looked Mike in the eyes. "Mike, do you know someone named Jessica?" "Huh?" Mike's face instantly turned pale. Everyone in the restaurant looked on curiously. "I don't know anyone by that name." Mike was clearly panicking. Rachel, looking puzzled, asked Mike, "Who is Jessica?" Mike insisted he didn't know her. "Let me ask you again, are you sure you don't know her?" "I said I don't know her." "How many times do I have to say it?" I sighed. At that moment, a loud voice echoed from the restaurant entrance. "How could you do this to me? You said you wanted to marry me. Who is this woman?" "Jessica." "What are you doing here?" Jessica had entered the restaurant. Rachel, her eyes wide with shock, said, "You told her you wanted to marry her? What is going on?" Mike, his face ashen, desperately tried to make excuses. "Rachel, it's not like that. She's just a friend." "I'm not just a friend. You said you loved me. That's why I lent you money." The venue was in an uproar. Everyone was watching the commotion, whispering about it. "I never borrowed any money. It's all lies." Jessica began to cry at Mike's words. Rachel seemed to believe Mike. But I couldn't let him get away with this. It was time to reveal the truth to everyone. "Mike, you got engaged to Rachel while you were still engaged to Jessica. Who do you think you are? Do you think you're a detective or something? You can't bring me down." I handed Mike my business card. "I work for a detective agency, and Jessica hired me to investigate your cheating." "What?" Yes, the woman who had just walked in was Jessica, my client. When she first came to our agency and showed me Mike's photo, I was shocked. But knowing Mike, it wasn't surprising, so I took on the case. Mike had promised to marry Jessica and borrowed a large sum of money from her, while also promising to marry Rachel and even meeting her parents. During my investigation, when my mother had a back injury, I purposely went to Mike's clinic. Around the same time, I received the invitation to the reunion and a call from Jacob. Jacob informed me that Mike and his fiancée would be attending the reunion. I initially thought Jessica was the fiancée attending the reunion, but when I told her, she was surprised. I never heard about any reunion from Mike. I want to see who this other woman is. Jessica's face twisted with anger. I decided to bring Jessica to the reunion to uncover the truth. I wonder how Mike will react if Jessica shows up at the reunion. There will be no way for him to make excuses anymore. I believed so. I thrust several photos at the stunned Mike, ready to get to the heart of the matter. Rachel peeked at the photos too. The pictures showed Mike and Jessica in a close embrace. The moment Mike saw them, he snatched them from me and tore them to shreds. Rachel stared at Mike in disbelief. These are fabricated. All lies. Even now, Mike was trying to escape the truth. I sighed. Tell me the truth. Rachel looked at Mike with a face that seemed on the verge of tears. Mike grasped her hand, desperately whispering, "The only one I love is you, Rachel." Suddenly, a woman who had been watching the scene unfolded walked towards Mike. It was Emily. In middle school, she hadn't been particularly noticeable, but 15 years later, she had become quite beautiful. "Mike, you promised to marry me too, didn't you? So you were seeing 3 women at the same time?" Emily's words sent a wave of shock through the restaurant. Even I didn't know about this and couldn't help but do a double take at Emily. Mike was visibly shaken, trembling uncontrollably. "How many women have you deceived? I can't believe this. I'm breaking up with you. And you'd better repay all the money you borrowed. I'll be claiming damages too." Jessica stormed out of the restaurant in fury. Rachel, now red-faced with anger, confronted Mike. "So you were deceiving me too? How dare you? I'm calling off the wedding. Goodbye." "No. If the wedding is called off, I won't get the investment for my clinic. I'll make sure my father knows. The investment is off." "Obviously." "Rachel. Please, don't say that." Rachel said that and left the restaurant just like Jessica. Mike, in a panic, chased after Rachel and left the restaurant. The restaurant fell silent. Cheating scum. Lost all respect for him. The room buzzed with condemnation of Mike's actions. Some classmates were consoling Emily. Finally, justice is served. Indeed. I was glad to have exposed Mike's true nature to everyone. Later, I handed Jessica the investigation report. That awful man was not worth it. "I'll be claiming damages as soon as possible," she said, smiling. Eventually, Mike ended up paying a substantial amount in damages to Jessica, Rachel, and Emily. News of Mike's deceit spread throughout the town, and his clinic had fewer and fewer patients. With the clinic struggling to stay afloat, Mike had to take out significant loans, but eventually, he couldn't keep up and had to close the clinic. On the last day, Mike was reportedly bawling his eyes out in a pitiful display. This was the result of his actions. I hope, even though it might be too late, that Mike never repeats his mistakes and lives without causing trouble for others. Today, as always, I continue my work as a detective, helping those in need.